Yep. Good evening. So last session we learned about data binding, right? We discussed about few important points. We learned how data binding works, and in this data binding we discussed about how to use state in function components. How to define state, how to use state in function components. So one more important point we discussed that React supports one-way binding. We can access and we can display. And we also saw one example of how we can fetch data from API, right? How we can fetch data from API and present the data. I hope you practiced that. Have you tried that NASA API? I showed you example, how we can configure, how we can handle, right? So one simple example, one more I will show you so that we will see now how two-way binding works. So as we already learned how we can fetch the data from API, you can try this. We will see one example from Fake Store API. There is a Fake Store API with some shopping data. We will use this Fake Store API. Actually, these people have a HTTP fakestore API.com. They have various methods actually. API.com/products. They have like products. This is actually, it returns all products. Whatever products are there, it will return all the products. They have another HTTP fakestore API.com/products/categories. Actually, it returns all categories. We have all products, all categories related. These two API methods, so many methods are there. In this, we will use these two. These are the basic API methods how we can handle. Right? Now, the point is accessing the data from API and present. Later, we can deal with the interactions, how we can handle interactions also. Because still we are using one-way binding. Still we are working with only one-way binding. So accessing the data and displaying in the UI, that is the part we are handling. So let's create one page. Let's see. I will add a new component here. In the components, let's add a component, shopping component.js. Okay, so here, as we already discussed, we have to import. So one is use state from React. And one more, you have to import use effect that defines actions to perform on initialization. So we are creating export. So default, so function, and it is shopping component. Shopping component is the function, and it should return so a simple empty container we configured, or we will keep a div there. We will define the class name as container fluid. Okay, this is a bootstrap container, and here I am defining header, and in this I have a heading. So shopping home. Okay, let's keep a span here, and I am applying the class name as bi and bi cart. Okay, now for this header we will put the class name some bg danger, text white, text center, and padding 2. These are all bootstrap classes. That is the header we have. Okay, now here I will create a section. In this section we have a nav, that is the navigation area, and we have a main. This is the main container. And in this nav, so I am creating for this section I will keep the class as row. This will have class as call3. This will have class as call9. And here I just defined a container and a label, and label is some select a category. And here we are having a drop down. We configure a drop down, class name as form select. These are all bootstrap classes. Okay, so this is all the basic design initially. Let's keep this shopping component in the startup in index. So shopping component, we will add that in the startup. Right. Now here we have to implement a small design of accessing data from API and presenting on the screen. This is all under one-way binding only. Still, we are learning how to fetch data from any hard-coded state or fetch data from any APIs. And for fetching from API, we are using the traditional fetch method. Later, we will learn other third parties. Because I hope you already learned about fetch promise in JavaScript. Fetch promise returns data in binary form, which we have to convert into JSON. You can use jQuery methods, jQuery Ajax, or you can also depend on third parties of React. So many third parties are there, we will see. Initially, we will use fetch until we are fetching the data and displaying. Yeah, so it is launching the shopping page. And in this already, I showed you how to set up Bootstrap and Bootstrap icons. I hope you are practicing every day with Bootstrap. I told you that later we will see a concept called React Material, how to use. Till that moment, we will use Bootstrap, all the presentation with Bootstrap in UI. So let it load. Meanwhile, we will write the methods in the background for fetching the data also, right? Now our intention is actually, yeah, this is the app. So I will just keep this in a, I will remove the component CSS. I will clean up this. Fine. That is for our previous Netflix example. Right. Now I have the basic design, shopping home. Now what I want is, I want all the categories you see here, the website, fakestoreapi.com. This is the website. And in this fake store API, you see they given so many HTTP methods. In that products, it is returning an array of all the products. They are providing some open source API data. It is fetching all the products and displaying. Now we are currently trying to use these two things. One is products, another one categories. Actually, you already saw when we tried to use this NASA API, right? NASA API, when we tried this NASA API, I showed you in the last session. In this, the data returned, so in which form data is coming when we browse the APIs. We used Mars rover photos, and this is the API we use. It is returning data in an object form. I told you that first you need to understand what data is coming, right? And here products, you can see products is an array. So directly products is an array. It has some products. And you have another request here, products/categories. Actually, products/categories is another one. And products/categories is returning only a simple array of categories. That means first you need to understand what the API is returning. You need to get that. You can see it is simple array of string. It is simple array of string type, right? Once you know what it is returning, then you can easily handle this. Now I want to display this inside the drop down, right? So then how we can manage in the shopping component? Now we need to configure a state. What is it? Categories. Categories and set categories. Into the categories, it is use state, and what you are, you can leave it empty, or what you are expecting it as an array, you can configure as an array, or it is implicitly typed, because you know JavaScript is implicitly typed. Implicitly typed means the type will be determined according to the value that is assigned later. So it's no issue. Now here another option. So we want these categories to load. I will do one thing. So let's create a function. Let's create a function called load categories. It's always good to create reusable functions, because if I want again later to refresh the list or reload the list, then every time no need to initialize the component. You can just call this function. What load categories function can do, it can fetch, and what it can do, fetch from which location? HTTP. This is fakestoreapi.com/products/categories. And it uses, because it is a promise, it uses then it gets the response, and whatever response comes, we will convert that into JSON. And it uses another then. So this will collect all the data. Data is nothing but the list of all categories. This we need to store in this reference. That means you have to use set categories. Into that you have to send the data. Set categories is a setter. It will collect whatever data comes, and it will send the data into this categories. So categories is an array. Is an array of, because the data that comes from the API, The data comes from the API is a simple string type. This is the array. What we are doing, we are collecting that and we are collecting that and we are storing in the local state. What is the local state name? Categories. Okay, this is load categories function. Fine. When this load categories should execute? When component initialize. So how to configure component initialization? We have to use effect. We have to configure use effect, right? We have to define use effect. So use effect, and into this we are configuring so the functionality, and it is a callback function, and there are no dependencies. Am I right? There are no dependencies. Okay. Now what we want this use effect to do, it has to load all the categories. That means we need to call the function here. What is the function? Load categories. Directly you can write this fetch method on use effect, right? So, or you can simply configure in a separate function and you can configure. So here all the categories are defined, all the categories are configured. Now everything is loaded into these categories. I need to display here in the drop down, we need to display those categories. So what we need to do here, we need a binding expression and categories dot map, and we need to read every category, and for every category we have to create an option, and option will display the category name because it's a simple string, and key I will define the category. So the category we will use as key. That's loading all the categories. And you can see here it is going to load all the categories and show here. That means whatever categories are present inside this electronics, jewelry, men's clothing and all, and those categories are displayed here. Means we are fetching from the API and we are displaying. If you want, you can add anything new into this. For example, in the beginning, I want all. That means at the top, I want all, but they don't have that all, right? Whatever is there in API, it is coming. So if you want that, then what you can do is when you are fetching here, when you are fetching and loading, this is array. Data is array. Into array, how to add a new element as the first element. Into JavaScript array, how to add a new element as first element. We have to use unshift. You learned array functions, no? Right. Right. Array have an unshift. Unshift is used to add item as a first item. Push is used to add as last item. Unshift is first item. Unshift, what you want to add? I want to add all as the first item. That means it is going to add all into this. And here, you see here, when you are defining, it should display that item. That means before adding all the item, because it is API, it will take a while of adding those options and displaying. From API, it will take some time to get that. You can see now all is ready. So, and all other options are defined. That means we can push anything into this. So all. Later you will learn. For example, actually here we are displaying every category name. Here, suppose you are trying to apply some string functions, like say to uppercase. I'm using a string function called to uppercase. That means its intention is to convert all into uppercase. We can use the basic string methods. Basic string methods you can use. But later you will face a lot of issues if you are changing the case, if you are dealing with related data, that I will explain, because still we are just learning only one part, how to fetch and show. Later, when we do two-way techniques, then we will implement all these functionalities. Initially, okay, this is ready. All the categories information is there. Now I want to display all the products in the main area. That means in the main area, I want all the products. Actually, this API have products, some 20 products information is there. All that products information I want to display in this area. So this is the area. In the main area, I want to show it. Then let's do one thing. So what we will do here, we will create a simple function, another one. This time we are trying to access all the products, and all products is again an array, right? That means to collect this information. So what you need to collect that information, you need to configure another one. What is it? Products. And we will define what set products. And the use state, we are configuring use state, and we are defining again an array, because we are expecting array. In last session, when we learned NASA API, it was an object, right? That object again contains array. Depends. Sometimes an object, sometimes an array, right? So here, so when data comes into this, that means we will create one more method. So we will create another function, that is load products. What these load products have to do? Fetch from HTTP fakestoreapi.com/products. That is the API. And in this, then, so response, we will get the response and return the response into JSON. And then we will collect all the data, and that data we will store into set products. It will set all the data. Products contains all the information. Now I want to display that here inside this main. Now for this main, I will keep as dflex also, display flex, flex wrap like this. So that is, we are configuring that flex. And in this main, I want to display all the products. Then I will use a binding expression. This is products dot map. Map, read every product and try to print that product details. I will use a card style. I will use a class card. So card, I will give margin 2, padding 2, and width some 25. All that card is defined here. Okay. And card will have an image. You can see every product contains lot of details. Every product have an ID, have a title, and every product have price, description, and every product have category, every product have image. You need to know these property names. In order to access the data, you need to know the properties, and every product have rating. One product related information, so much is there. This is all about only one product related details. So let's do this here. So image, what is the image source? Image source is equal to, it is a product dot image, right? So class name is card image top, and height of the image will be some 150 pixel. Okay. And below that image, let's create a div and class as card header. And in this, we will put a paragraph which contains the product title. Every product title should display here. And here we will configure header. And here I am defining another div and a class name as card body. In this card body, I will just use a data list. Data term is price, and data definition This is product dot price. Another data term is rating and the data definition. Here I will put a span. So class name BI star fill. Okay. And text success. And here I will put the rating related information. Actually, you can see this rating is again an object which contains rate and count. So that means here I will use product dot rating dot rate and I will just put here from how many people. I will put a span here, and here I will put class. This is in the square brace. I will put product dot rating dot count. That's how we configured, right? This is fine. Now let's see how the data is displayed. We are iterating a card. We are generating a card for every product here and displaying in the main. That means all the products, these products must load on effect, right? That means here, so use effect, load categories at the same time, load products. Products also should load. Now when the page loads, it should load both the categories and products. You can see all the products are loaded here. These are all the products information available here. That means these are all the categories we are having, and these are all the products we are having. So let's, you can keep the height and the overflow auto and all these here. Suppose I am configuring in the main. Where is it? Yeah, this is the main here. And for that, we have to apply some height. Actually, it is general main. Suppose height is not a property. Suppose I defined 500 as height. And here we can give overflow auto. That means actually, if the height is configured, then it will be better. And height is not a basic property that you can apply for every element. So already we discussed that we cannot bind, right? So here you can see I will bind this. I will apply this now. Main should have certain height. We will define here inline style. We can define style. And generally, while working with styles, I will tell you style binding. So it is same like how you apply style for a JavaScript element. In JavaScript, for any element, how you apply style. Dot style name. I hope you know that style names are given in camel case, right? So because, for example, in CSS, it is like background color, right? In JavaScript, it will be background color. We have to apply by using style. Am I right? I hope you know this. In JavaScript, how you bind the style. Here, we have to use a binding expression. In that binding expression, so style, yeah. In that binding expression, again, the style attribute. We have to, because style is an object. That object contains key and value. What is the key? Key is height. What is the value? The value is some value. Suppose 400 pixels. That's how generally we have to write the inline styles. If you are writing inline style, then you have to define style in an expression. You have to write an object with a key and value. Multiple means, you know, you have to put a comma and configure. Later, I will show you one style binding concept here. Now, my intention is that, so if I can keep this to 600 pixels or 500 pixels, you can see you have a scroll bar here. These are all the products. That means I don't want to scroll this header and the navigation bar. Then we can just put a style and keep overflow auto, then it will display all the products here. So we are fetching the data and we are displaying the data from a fake store API. So this is just one-way binding. Now the concept of two-way binding will teach you how we can select electronics and only electronics will come here. Right? How we can select jewelry, only jewelry will come here. That requires now event and two-way binding techniques to understand. Till now what you have seen, one way. That means accessing the data from your hard-coded resources or from any API and configure that in a state and access through the state and display the data. This is one simple technique of handling the data and managing. I showed previously NASA APIs. Now we have seen this fake store API. Later we will create our own APIs and we will see how we can fetch, how we can post, interact with the data. But now this is an example. I will give this as shopping component.js. This is the shopping component example. Let me copy all this code. This is all the code for accessing the data and presenting it. I hope you are clear in this. So we created two methods. One is load categories, another one load products. And we created two resources to store the data state, one for categories and products, and we are loading them on UseFM. Actually, you can directly write without these functions. Without these functions, you can write multiple fetch methods here. One fetch method for category, another fetch method for them. But I am separating and keeping in a function so that I can reuse later, right? Initially, the presentation, we are using a drop down and we are using a simple div container here. And as I already told you, here also, this is iterating item. This iterating item should have a key. What should be the key? We will give product.id. Product have an ID, which we will use as a key for unique reference for the every element. Because every iterating item must have a key. We configured that and display here. So here we will put, otherwise you will get an error in the console. So you just need to define this with a key. That is product.id. That will be used as key. Right? This is basic how we can work with one-way binding, accessing and displaying the data. Now, how to manage two-way binding? Two-way binding. And officially, as I already told you, that React will not support any two-way binding. So React will not support two-way binding. Two-way binding. React will not support two-way binding. You have to explicitly implement by using event binding. So technically you have to implement by using event binding. So in order to learn two-way binding, first you have to know about event binding. Without knowing event binding, you cannot handle two-way binding. So you must be very perfect in JavaScript events and event binding techniques and methods in order to handle this point. What is two-way binding? That means actually two-way binding, it is the process. It is the process of identifying the changes in UI. And updating the changes into data source. Identifying the changes in UI and updating the changes into the data source. Why we said that React is one-way binding? Because it cannot identify the changes and update back to the data source implicitly. It cannot do. Some technologies can do that. That's the reason they support two-way binding. and React will not support, if any technology is not supporting two-way binding, then you have, it doesn't means that it is not having two-way binding. So that means it is not supported means it implicitly it doesn't have any technique for two-way binding. So explicitly you have to resolve it. You have to use your knowledge of JavaScript events and all to handle this two-way binding. Let's see what is that. So to understand this concept, you must be very perfect in this event binding. So the question here for the first important point is, what is event? So the first important thing you should know, what is event binding, how it works actually, how React is going to manage that, what is event, how this event works. Then only you can implement the two-way binding concept. So in JavaScript, if you have learned that point, JavaScript, what is event in JavaScript? So what is event in JavaScript? Actually, event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. Technically, event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. Actually, I will explain this point. I will explain that, but I hope you people are good aware of this once you're done with your JavaScript events. If you know JavaScript events, I have a definition about event. Actually, event follows a software design pattern called observer. Event follows a software design pattern called observer. Event follows a pattern called observer. Observer is a software design pattern. Actually, it is a communication pattern. It is a communication pattern. Actually, software design patterns are categorized into creational patterns, structural patterns, behavior patterns, and all, right? So event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. What does this means actually? What is this means? Generally, that is the technical definition of event, right? So see, as you know, in JavaScript, suppose we have so here we have a function. Some insert is a function. Now here we have a button on click is equal to insert. So this is some insert button. Okay, this is an insert button. Now usually by seeing this, what generally people without good technical knowledge they think about this is, there is a function called insert and we are calling the function on button click, which is wrong. That is learning level knowledge. That means if anybody says that we are calling insert function on insert click, that means he is an absolute fresher of JavaScript. That means he don't know about event then. Actually, we are not calling the function insert. Actually, we are pointing towards the function insert. It is not function calling, it is function pointer. Event uses a delegate mechanism. Delegate means function pointer mechanism. It is a function pointer. It is not function calling. For example, see, suppose let's go to your JavaScript, because everything I have to compare with your knowledge of JavaScript. So we have a head section, we have a script empty, and we have the body section, and we have button insert. And here we are writing on click insert function. Okay. And you see there is no function called insert, and we are calling that function here as per your recommendation, right? You say that function calling. If you are calling a function which is not available, then obviously error should come. Am I right? Saying that there is no insert, right? That means now I will inspect here. I will go to the console here, and you can see in the console there is no error. If there is a function call happening here, then it's not showing any error. But it will show error when I click on insert. When I click on insert, now it will look for that function in head and it is not available. Then it says insert is not defined. If according to your knowledge, if event is function calling, then at the time of loading itself, it should show. So event is not function calling. Event is function pointer. So that is what actually event uses delegate mechanism. Delegate mechanism, which is called as function pointer. Event uses function pointer mechanism. It is not calling the function. It is pointing towards the function. It is not calling the function. It is pointing towards the function. So we are not calling the function. We are pointing towards the function. And here, important in this approach, important is, this is called subscriber. Subscriber indicates what actions to perform, what functionality to perform. That is decided by subscriber. And this sender will tell when to perform. That means sender will tell when to perform that functionality. So sender sends a notification to whom? Subscriber. Sender sends a notification to the subscriber. That means it sends a notification to the subscriber saying that button click happened. Then the subscriber will perform this functionality. It will perform this functionality. So event is a mechanism. Event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. In software design patterns, it is called observer. At very high level, if you show 10 plus years experience, they will ask the question, which design pattern event follows? Because design pattern is not for even 4 or 5 experienced people also. We don't have that much confidence on them that they know all design patterns. Even 5-6 years experienced people also don't have a complete knowledge on design patterns. We don't even expect from them, right? Design patterns is the concept at lead level, project lead, team lead level, at consultant levels, right? At extreme experience of 10-15 years, you are good and great in design patterns because you are a software architect, not a software developer. If you are a software architect, then you know all the design patterns. Then you know that everything is a design pattern. Then you can even tell that why for is called as iterator. Why it is called iterator? For is called as an iterator. Map is an iterator. Why it is called iterator? Iterator means what? Iterator is nothing but it is a software design pattern used for reading the elements from a collection in sequential order. Iterator is a software design pattern. It is used for reading the elements from a collection in sequential order. without initialization, condition, and counter. That means you don't need initialization. You don't need to tell where to start. You don't need to tell where to stop. It will start, it will stop according to the collection. Why it is called for loop? You know, for loop. Actually, for in, for off, right? For in, for off are called iterators. For is called loop. Why it is called loop? Why for in, for off called iterators? So much is there, right? At learning level, different idea is given to you to just know about it. But at expert level, developer exactly knows when and where which option have to be used. When to use for, when to use while, when to use do while, when to use for in, when to use for off. Right now, this is very important for experienced people. So at experience level, you may get a question like, what is the pattern followed by event? And very important is, so React, actually, this is very important. So actually JavaScript events are managed. JavaScript events are managed by browser window object, are managed by browser window object. JavaScript events are managed by browser window object. Actually, you have browser objects, na? JavaScript browser objects. What are the JavaScript browser objects? We have window, we have location, we have navigator, and we have history, and we have document. These comes under JavaScript browser objects. So, and events belong to window. Events belong to window. That means, suppose we have button. What is event for button? What is event for button? What event we use for button? What is the button event? On click. It is not button. You can click on heading also. You can click on div, span, heading, link, anywhere you can click. So this on click doesn't belong to button. Right? At JavaScript learning basic level, you might have learned that button have an event called on click, but no, event doesn't belong to any control. Event doesn't belong to any control, not even button, checkbox, radios. Events belong to browser. Events belongs to browser object, that is window. So event doesn't belong to any control in HTML. That means even you can use click for heading. Heading also can be clicked. Div can be clicked. Span can be clicked. You can click anything in document. You can click anything in document. So, but the events are configured by using this browser objects. So window contains the events. And as you already learned, right, that now React cannot directly use the browser events because those are related to browser model, DOM, actual DOM. This is related to actual DOM. Then React, what it does is React uses synthetic events. React uses synthetic events object. React uses synthetic events object for virtual DOM. That means actual DOM contains on click, on change, on blur, on focus, all those events same. But React will not use those events directly. React uses the virtual DOM events. Virtual DOM events are having the same name as the actual DOM events, but those events are managed by an object called synthetic events. So in React, many times this question comes in interviews, what are synthetic events? Synthetic events are nothing but these are the events managed by React at virtual DOM. And these synthetic events will map to the actual DOM events. That means React cannot use the actual DOM events. So it cannot use the actual, because obviously it is working with virtual DOM. Then it is synthetic events. That means all events in React that you use are derived from one base class. What is that base object? Synthetic events. Synthetic events. All React events are derived from these events. And very important is synthetic events. Synthetic events will map to browser events. Synthetic events will map to browser events. They will technically map to the browser events. So they will technically map to the browser events. Now here you will feel the exact delegate mechanism, function pointer mechanism, right? Actually in JavaScript, it is a function pointer only, but you will not feel, or because you see, when you see this kind of syntax, I already told you that you will think like you are calling the function, am I right? But actually you are not doing, you are pointing towards the function. Here you can see that clearly. And in this actual JavaScript, now you know that this entire part, this is called, what is it? This is called event handler. And this part, that means only this on click, this is called event. That is event. This is event. So this is the event, this is the event handler, and this is the sender and the subscriber, right? And generally in JavaScript, every event handler in JavaScript contains two arguments. One is event, another one this. In JavaScript events, everything is two arguments, right? That means we have two important default arguments. One is event, another one is this. I think you know already what this will send. It is a sender. This is a sender. Is event also sender? What this will send? This will send object related properties. Object related properties means ID, name, class, all these are sent by this. What event will send? Event related properties. Event related properties like client X, am I right? Client X, client Y, key code, character code, all these comes under event related properties, right? All these comes under event related properties. These are event related properties. Let me keep it here. Yeah. These are event related properties. Event related properties are these. Object related properties are these. Object related means button ID, button name, button class. But very important, this is all JavaScript, right? This is all JavaScript. But very important here is generally, so React synthetic events will support only one event argument. So only one event argument. Only one event argument. This is event, that is. So simply saying that this is not allowed, right? There is no this. This is not allowed. Only event is allowed. Then how you will access object properties? How to access the object properties? Through event, you can access event related properties. Object related properties you have to access by using target. Event dot target dot object related property. Object related property means ID, name, class, and all this. I hope if you know jQuery already, you have awareness on this. You know jQuery, then you know that jQuery will not allow both arguments. It will allow only event. And how to access object related property. Object related property we have to access by using target. By using target, we have to access the object related property. This is basic. When you are working with the events, we need to configure that in this way. Now see generally how React events are defined. Suppose we have a function. What is that function? Insert. Insert is subscriber, right? Now how button have to handle it? It uses synthetic. What is the synthetic event? On click. It is the synthetic event, and on click it will point towards that function. What is that function? Insert. That's it. That is how it will use. This makes a sense of this is function pointer. That means you will not use any parenthesis here. Right? You have to just point towards the function. You need a name of the function. And here you can send the event arguments. Here you can access event.clientX, event.keycode like this. These are event related properties. Object related properties, this dot e.target we have ID. We have e.target.name. So e.target.value, all such things we can access by using that event argument. This is how we have to configure the events. And no need to teach you list of events here, because React uses all JavaScript events in the same way. And I hope you know JavaScript events are categorized into so many groups. What are those? We have mouse events, we have keyboard events, am I right? So we have element state events, we have button events. So you have timer events, na? You have clipboard events, even now you have touch events. All these are events, categories. I hope you learned in JavaScript all these events. So here we don't waste time in learning events. This is React. So here we will just use events. So I am not going to teach you what is mouse over, mouse out, mouse down, mouse up. What is key up, key down, key press. That's not a part here. So that is just we have to use this event. Whatever JavaScript events are there, we can use those JavaScript events. That means you should know correctly for which purpose, which event is used, and where and how do we deal the events, right? So the difference here you will understand how we can configure, right? Let's see now. Suppose mouse events means so many here. I'm just giving example. Mouse event means what you have, like on mouse over, right? Like we have on mouse out. We have like on mouse move, like on mouse down, like on mouse up. All these are mouse events. Keyboard events like on key up. So we have like on key down. So we have like on key press. All these are keyboard events. Element state events means like on change. We have like on select. We have like on focus. We have like on blur. All these are element state events, like on checked, right? All these are element state events. Button events like on click, like on DBL click. DBL is double click. On context menu, this is right click. We have timer events means set interval. I hope you learned. So clear interval. We have like set timeout. We have like clear timeout, timeout. All these are timer events. Clipboard events like on cut, like on copy, like on paste, on paste. These are events. We have touch events, touch event like on touch start, on touch start. We have like on touch end, on touch end. We have like on touch move, touch move. So we have form events which are very important also, you know, on submit, am I right? We have like on reset. All these are all JavaScript events, and you should know all these events. And these are all the events in JavaScript. So everywhere in JavaScript based technology, you have to use them. Nobody teaches, even in Angular, React, anywhere. So it is just JavaScript event. Only the point is you have to know how to configure them. Configure them, right? How do we define them? How do we configure and use them? We will see, right? Let's see how to define the event and how we can handle it. Just I will show one example now. Let's add one component. So this is, I will give as event binding component, component.js. Okay, let's import everything. Import, so use state, so use effect, okay, from React. Then export default, so function. This is binding component, okay, just return. So here a div, let's say class name container fluid. Okay, first basic point I will show you here, very basic thing. First we will see here. Suppose we are keeping here, so a data list, data term, some user name, and here data definition. Here I have to give input type as text, and okay, this is the value. Now what should happen here is we need to configure a state constant user name and set user name, and it is a simple use state. It is general string type object, string type data we can store into it. Now here I am displaying the value. I will put a header, I will say hello, and whatever username is entered. I want the text box and this store in this reference. That means username. Here I am creating use state. I will keep some John. That is the default value you are configuring there. That means the default value is there. Suppose here, so I will run this one. Let's keep this in the startup now. Event binding component, event binding component, and this is hello John. By default it is coming. Now what should happen here is I need to bind the same to text box, or then text box have a property called value. Into that value property we are binding user name, and you can see we are binding that user name. Now inspect. When I am inspect, so let's refresh this here, and you can see in the console you will find there is an error. It says that warning. So you provided a value to a form field with on, then it is read only, one way only. It is one way only. That means, so we are making any change, it is not allowing to make any change into this. This is only one way. That means now how do we handle two way? That means now what we have to do is, see, if I don't bind this value, if I don't bind that value here, and you can see that here I am not binding, then there is no issue. When I'm binding, then there is issue. It says that you are binding some value, but it is read only. You cannot make any change. Then what we do here is we need to write one function. We need to write a function. So that is handle. You can give anything, but traditionally we handle user name. Handle username. So what this function have, when this function have to fire up, this what this function have to do first, this is subscriber. This is subscriber. Subscriber will tell what actions to perform. What actions to perform? Collect the value from text box assigned to this username. How to collect the value from text box here? So to collect the value from text box, so you need an event handler, event argument. This event argument can collect the value that is entered inside it when user is changing. That means what we will do here, we will write on change. On change. So that means on change, when user is changing, we have to point towards this function. Am I right? It is a function. Means what we have to do, handle user. That means it is pointing towards that function. Now the function can accept all the details here. Suppose I am just using here, observably, I am using console.log target.value. It is going to collect the value entered inside this text box. Now see here, I am defining here, refresh here, and I am typing here, and it is going to collect the value on every change. On every change, it is going to collect the value. And here, when on everything, this need to be updated into this username. That means we are defining, we are using set username into that e dot target dot what is value. That means target value means this text box value. We are accessing the text box value and we are binding here username, then it is displaying. It is displaying. Now, for example, now here I am binding value property. Now I am binding to the value property. What we have to bind? Username. Username. I am binding to the value property. Here you can see when I bind it to the value. Now this is perfect two-way binding. That means we are accessing the data and displaying, identifying the changes, and we are updating. You may ask, like, do I need to use on change only compulsory? Suppose I am using not on change, I say on blur. On blur, I am writing on blur. That means now here you can see, so there is an option here. That, but I am typing, so I am clicking here and I am typing. That means because in JavaScript you might have learned that you can use any event, on blur, on change, on focus, right? You can key up. So that means here I am defining on key up, key down. We are pointing towards that, and you can see here it is pointing. See, the without on change, it will render read on. But see, because I'm not binding here, I am not binding the username, but I am using on key up, and here I am typing something. It is working. That means binding to the value property, binding to the value property and displaying a value is always read only until or unless you can use any event for the controls. Now you can use on, right? You can use on blur. On blur, we are pointing towards this. That means here you can see there is no error. I entered some name David. After that, I finished blur. Blur means click outside or tab, then it will display. You can use any JavaScript event. Only the point is, if you are trying to bind to which one, if you are binding to value, then it cannot identify the change in the value until or unless on change occurred. So here, very important, the note is, so the key important note here is, if you are binding any value, if you are binding any value to HTML form element, binding any value to HTML form element using value property, then it is configured as read only. Then it is configured as read only. So what is the solution then? To allow read and read write, to allow read write, you have to bind on change event. Am I right? To allow read write, you have to change on change event for HTML form element. Right? And one more, I will give clarity. If value binding is not defined, then you configure without on change, right? If value binding is not defined, that means you are using some username. Username is some syntax I will give here. So a constant username, I will just use state, and this is like some John. I'm not using set, just roughly I'm configuring here. Now input type is equal to text, and here so value is equal to user name. You are binding, this will be invalid. Understood? You know what to do now, right? Why it is invalid? It is read only. We have to define text, value is equal to username, and it is compulsory that you have to define on change. That means here you have to mention the event. What is the event name you need to configure? This is valid. This is compulsory. And if you are not binding to value, then you can use any another event. So value binding is there, then you have to identify the change in the value by using only on change. So while working with two-way binding, this is important. So example, I will copy this. So that is event binding demo component.js. Event binding component, event binding component.js. Just this code I will give here. Now later I will show you. This is just basic example to understand how the event binding works. Now how the event binding is used here. This is the basic example, right? Now how to handle various controls. That means drop down, list box, checkbox, radius. We will design a form. Through the form, we will ask the user to input the value, we will collect the value, and we will use those values. That means we will see complete two-way binding, and we will implement this shopping cart example now. In that, user selects a particular category, the category related product should come. We need to handle filtering, sorting, searching on data. These we will implement by using event binding. That we'll see tomorrow. Right? Tomorrow we'll see examples on two-way binding. Okay. Right.